What's up, good people? What's up, good people? This is When Men Open Up, a show where we are redefining manhood through transparency. My name is Dominique,
And I'm Dexter.
and in partnership with WYTV7 Christian Broadcasting Network, we have another episode. And this topic for today is soul work. Soul work. We got to get some soul work. Matter of fact, Dex, we just got off of a good series, and we're gonna continue it on every month. But conversation which we had with our father, and it brings us. We had some deep conversations.
Definitely.
We had some great feedback, but it brings us to this as well, soul work. So let's kind of get into soul work. What do we mean by soul work and so forth?
Well, definitely. Well, soul work is a very interesting concept. And what it really boils down to is identifying issues and traumas that exist within us. No longer running from it, no longer accepting it by saying, well, hey, this is just how I am. But really taking a deep dive and asking yourself, is this how I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And, as we ask ourselves if this is how we want to be, and if the answer is no, then we have to take inventory of the issues that commonly recur in our lives, commonly hinder us from moving forward, and really being the type of people that we want to be. One of the biggest things that often keeps us pigeonholed in a certain position in life is trauma. Those traumas spell out in a number of different ways. There are a number of different things, but oftentimes the pain of the offense keeps us in a mindset that it doesn't allow us to move forward in life. And so soul work is the intentional work of addressing those deep-seated wounds to get healing in those areas so you can move forward.
And just by that explanation, soul work is very, very important.
Definitely.
And I think we have much of a misunderstanding when it comes down to trauma. And I'm so glad, and this is what it seems like to me. I'm not sure how often this conversation is really happening, but when it comes down to mental health, it does seem like we're taking it a little more serious.
Definitely.
It does seem like we are being more assertive with developing platforms and developing more organizations and more safe spaces to allow people of various backgrounds to, have a place where they can really just share some of the things that's really affecting them, and people are looking at counseling and therapy in a different light. But with trauma, I think is very, very I think there's a big misunderstanding with trauma. I think when we think of trauma, we think of certain situations and certain things happening to us. But trauma can be so many different things, that has impacted you, and you didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And I think if we can really, like you said, understand our behaviors, understand, what are some things that I grew up in life? Why do I respond to some different things a certain way? Then we can begin to really just do some more digging. That's what it really is. That's digging.
Yeah.
And I think when we do that digging, I think we can find out some things.
I mean, and the scary thing about soul work, because I don't want to make anybody believe that it's something easy. I think that's a huge disservice to make it sound like it's an easy thing. What makes it difficult is that oftentimes we fortify the hurt, meaning that we don't ever want to experience the pain of that trauma again, right. So we safeguard ourselves. Mm-hmm. The thing about the soul work is it requires you to break down those barriers that you yourself built in order to start addressing those issues. And a lot of times we don't want to go back to that place. We don't want to recall the offense. We don't want to recall what traumatized us. But it's necessary in many cases because once again, if you really want to move forward in life, you don't want to be pigeonholed to a frame of mind that has hindered you for such a long time. You're going to have to address it.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And many of us, if not all of us, to be honest, have, experienced some
Oh,
form of trauma.
definitely, definitely.
It's experiencing a lot of pain. It's experiencing it's the feeling of being exposed on such a high level of embarrassment, hurt, pain. The list goes on and on and on, and that triggered you.
Yeah,
You get what I'm saying? And we don't want to go back because we don't want those reminders. And sometimes those reminders has a reaction,
yeah,
and that reaction is not always pleasant.
true.
But I think when we go into understanding what the trauma is, then we'll have an understanding that, wow, you know what? When I got bullied, you know what? That's probably the reason why I responded. I
Yeah.
respond the way I responded. When my mother or father did this X, Y, and Z to me, that's probably the reason why I talk the way I talk, or whatever the case may be. This situation was probably trauma as well, and that really helps you. I think it's so difficult to really make the change that we want to make in our life if we're not able to recognize it. I think recognition is one of the most important things, because when we're able to recognize and identify, that's when we're on the right track.
I mean, once again, though, what you're speaking to is, a person who's conscious enough to observe, you know, I respond this way when X, Y, and Z happens. A lot of times, the easy fallback is just say, "This is how I am," and nobody really wants to explore why do I spaz out when such and such
Yeah,
happens.
exactly.
Nobody wants to do that. Why is it that I have a hard time committing to relationships? Like, I'm just, I like to be by myself, or every 6 months, I feel like I gotta leave. Like, nobody really explores why they, act the way they do.
Most definitely.
And so what we're challenging the listening audience, and many occasions ourselves, is to say, hey, let's do an inventory of why I do what I do, because this, is not allowing me to really explore myself and probably really become a greater version of myself. And so let's dive in a little deeper, my brother.
Most definitely. And you know what? It's the trauma, especially when we were kids. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we tend to really downplay the most, and just say, you know what, that's just how things were back in the day, or that's just how things was in our household.
Yeah.
That's just, that was just a normal thing. And I think that's something that can really get us off track too, by just
Right.
accepting that, you know what, that's just the way things were.
Yeah.
And it probably was the way things were, but let's dive deeper and let's understand, you know what, how did that experience really tailor you? Every experience has an effect on our lives.
True. I mean, the thing about the childhood traumas, many of us are adults. Depending the magnitude of that trauma, a lot of us have forgotten it. You've hidden it so deep within the box of your soul that you don't even know how to go back to it.
Most definitely.
But all you know is that when that certain situation comes up, you feel some kind of way. If you're around a certain place, it causes this uneasiness.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you don't know what it is. And oftentimes what it is that there is a soul wound that you have never addressed. You just guarded, you blocked it off. And it's oftentimes connected to a trauma. You and I were talking about this, and one of the significances of conversations I wish I had with my dad, in dialoguing with our listening audience. A lot of men talk about their fathers not being present. And, we also talk about, fathers not being emotionally available. A young man or a young woman who did not have a father who was available may suffer with rejection.
Right.
But as an adult, what it looks like is, well, I can't commit to relationships. I don't do relationships.
Right.
We're relational people. humanity, we're supposed to be able to relate with one another. And so if you struggle in the area of your relationship,
Most
we
definitely.
can't dismiss it and say, well, this is just how I am. Like, no, it might be directly linked to the fact that when you were younger, you were rejected by somebody that you were depending upon.
Yeah.
And because they weren't there, and because it hurt so much,
Hmm.
you said, you know what, I would never allow myself to experience this level of hurt again. So what ends up happening is that you absorb it, and it's now in your soul, and your soul is saying that in order to properly defend myself, I can't let anybody get close.
Most definitely.
And that's how this thing looks, you know. And you can, whether it be a sexual trauma or, you know, bullying is another big one. You know, we create these safety mechanisms that will not allow us to get caught back in that same situation again.
Right.
And once again, a lot of times it happens when we're children and we don't remember the particular offense itself.
Hmm.
We just know that we feel uneasy when something vaguely reminds us of that moment.
Yeah. And those safety mechanisms are just adjustments. We'll,
Yeah,
as days go on, as years go by, we will make adjustments to our life so we can really just, keep ourselves safe, so we
definitely.
won't feel vulnerable and so forth. But let's take a step back. How are those adjustments that you have made, affecting your life?
Exactly.
How is it really affecting the way you respond to these situations or you respond to people? I think it's very good. I think this video is very good because now we'll get to the point where even if you don't look at something as trauma,
Mm,
let's just question the behavior.
exactly. That's
Let's
good.
just question the way I respond to everything. Whether you think it's right or you think it's wrong, you think it's off, or whatever the case may be. Let's just question it because once you question it, that's what's called reflection. You're reflecting.
Yeah.
You're trying to understand. Okay, where did this come from? Where did this really begin, and so forth. And I really like. I really love this topic, but let's go more into how is the trauma introduced, and we kind of already went
Mm.
into it. But how is the trauma introduced?
Well, because you mentioned it earlier about trauma, uh, it's not always a big one event. You
Right.
know, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is a catastrophic event
Hmm.
that wipes you off your feet. But it can also be a series of events. You mentioned the bullying. You know, kid is constantly bullied every day, every day, every day. And so now he's fearful of going to the school. He's
Right.
fearful of being around certain type of people. And he or she grows up. Now they're not being bullied, but they approach life from the vantage point that they're going to be taken advantage of.
Hmm.
And so they avoid certain situations that remind them of when they were younger. It can be the traumatic event, the one uh, overarching event.
Hmm.
You know, maybe a rape. You know, um, other sexual abuses. You know, it can be a traumatic event that
Right.
derails the course of your life. And what ends up happening is that our minds are wired in such a way where we're always trying to make sense of things that happen to us.
Right.
And that becomes the means in which you start creating safety mechanisms because your mind is trying to work on a way where it can preserve you, the individual.
Hmm.
You know, we know our bodies are made up in such a way that it preserves itself. I don't know if somebody's in say a car accident, you know, your body knows that I have to preserve the brain, I have to preserve the heart, and then all these other arteries, you know, other appendages, I don't need those as much as I need the heart and the
Right.
brain to live. So your body knows that it's supposed to preserve itself. The same thing happens emotionally when you're hurt. Your mind is working on something to keep you safe.
Hmm.
And so that's how the trauma is introduced.
Right.
And that's how subconsciously you start creating these once again these safety mechanisms to keep you from experiencing that hurt again. And so oftentimes what we see is we see people who when they're upset their reaction doesn't necessarily match the level of the current offense. But I want to put it out there that they may be responding from the place that they wish they responded when the trauma happened. I'm going to be overly aggressive now because I wish that I was overly aggressive when that bully messed with me. You're like, man, that what just I just stepped on your shoes, man. That doesn't call on you, raising up on me like that. But what it is that I wish that I responded when I was younger. I wish I defended myself, and so now I'm going to go at all costs to let you know that you will not take advantage of me.
To prevent that from happening again.
But I've also seen it where the person responds from the chronological age of when the trauma take place. Meaning they may be, say, 40 years old, but they respond like a 10-year-old will respond. And what it is that, at the age of 10, the offense, the trauma took place, and they didn't know how to handle it. So while on the outside they matured, emotionally, that trauma kept them in that place of adolescence. Right. And so every time a similar situation comes up, they respond in a juvenile manner. As we mature and as we age, we should be able to handle certain disagreements and misunderstandings as adults. But some people, they go on 10 real quick.
Right.
And it's because emotionally they haven't developed in those areas that they've been traumatized in.
Most definitely. I think another area that with a bunch of guys that I talk to when it comes down to, being there for the kids or even with mentoring, some of the guys, they'll let me know that, I hesitate with mentoring. And they hesitate with mentoring because they don't believe that they're going to be consistent. So it's that fear because of someone or their father not being present, someone that really meant to them, that was there one moment and then gone the next. They know exactly how that feel. And with them, they're saying, you know what, I know how that feel. I was looking forward to that person every day coming to see me or spend time with me. And I just can't bear just being that person. It's so many guys, and we didn't heard, it's a lot of guys that say, you know what, I don't want to be like him.
Yeah.
I despise being like him. I don't want to have any traits like him. And that mindset reflects everything about their behavior.
Yeah.
And it makes them hesitate with doing certain things. It makes them more motivated to do certain things. But when it come down to mentoring, some of the guys, they will let me know that, you know what, I'm just not going to do that because I just can't be like my father. And I don't know if I'm going to be consistent. So if I'm not sure I'm going to be consistent, I'm not going to have anything to do with that. I think on another side with, we question a lot, why are certain men not being present for the kids? And, some of them really just don't know how to.
Yeah.
And they just don't understand the importance of being present because that person wasn't present for them. And some people may listen to it and say, well, that's an excuse, but it's still trauma when somebody like that is not around. Yeah. It's traumatizing when someone that you love, someone who is a part of you, is there one moment and then gone the next, or never was around, and you're questioning yourself like, okay, is it about me?
There you go.
What did I do wrong? Yeah. And now I'm feeling less than, I'm feeling less adequate, you get what I'm saying, and so forth and so forth.
Man, that's huge, man, and that's powerful. And the sad thing is that oftentimes there's no resolution at the young age. No one comes back and says, you know what, no, this is not about you. But and if you never get that resolution, once again, you become that adult who's apprehensive about becoming available for those who need you, because you're still thinking that, hey, the last person I really invested in, I ran them off. And it almost becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something, because in your mind, you'll draw back to another instance where maybe another relationship didn't work out, and now you're starting to see yourself as the
Hmm.
common, the common thread between those instances, and now you're starting to think that maybe I'm the one who repels people. And so I'm looking at it like, well, I'm doing you a service by not getting involved with you. And so that's, it's huge, man, as it relates to soul work and really starting to do this inventory. I know we talk about it quite often, and the reality is that when we say, do a self evaluation, that this is the type of stuff that we're talking about.
Hmm.
Take a real look at yourself and ask yourself, why do I feel the way I feel about these certain issues? Why
Yeah,
do I respond the way I respond when these things happen?
most definitely.
And once again, it's going to require that you go within yourself and start to break down those barriers that you have built.
Most definitely. And we all have triggers. I
Yeah.
mean, I think, and that's another thing for it, term for it. We have triggers. It's something that triggers us to be angry. It's something that triggers us to be sad. It's something that triggers us to be frustrated and so forth. And it's very important to be aware of those triggers so we understand what adjustments we do need to make. And when we are aware of those triggers, that really does help. But I think, and I'm not trying to get off topic, but I think this is gonna really give us more patience for other people because we are very
Yeah.
quick to judge. We are very quick to shake our heads with people and just have and not really have that understanding that there's a reason why that person gets angry like that. There's a reason why this person is probably always quiet in this situation, or there's a reason why this person reacts that way. And hopefully we can just take time out, just a little time out, to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and really, just for a second or two, just put ourselves in their world. You get what I'm saying? I feel like we really have a lack of empathy right now, or it's really at an all-time high right now. And we don't want to take that time out, just like we don't want to take that time out to reflect within us, but really understand someone else's story, understand someone else's role, understand why someone's hands are so rough, understand why someone's feet is so dirty. You get what I'm saying? And really understanding, what type of life did that person have? Because we really understood at least some of the things. It ain't even got to be everything, just some of the things that some people have really gone through and really experienced. We'll say, you know what, wow, if I would have gone through that, maybe I would respond the same way. Maybe I'll talk the same way. Maybe I would walk the same way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying that says, hurt people hurt people,
Mm-hmm.
hurting people hurt people, and we take such a very narrow view of people and say, well, man, they're just mean, or they're just whatever. But like you said, we don't really take the time to really understand why people are the way they are,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if we were really serious about doing that, I think it really reveals things about ourselves that we might not want to address. And because we don't want to address it within ourselves, it's easy to just make it a judgment and keep it
It's
moving.
very easy.
But this is really about, how do we get whole, as individuals and then collectively as a people. And I think that this is one of the major keys to really get a victory in that area.
Most definitely. I really do hope people are really enjoying this video and this podcast. If you are enjoying it, just please feel free just to share with someone because we really want people to really go through that self-evaluation, understanding that self-discovery. You get what I'm saying, and understanding what the triggers are, understanding why you behave the way you behave and respond the way you respond. But I really do believe this is going to help someone.
Oh,
You
yeah.
get what I'm saying, and we're going to continue on this conversation. And if you have any feedback, please feel free to drop us some feedback, drop us some questions. If you have any questions that you want us to be a topic, if you have any topic suggestions, please feel free to inbox us, email us when men open up at gmail.com. You have any speaking engagements, workshops you want us to participate in, we are available for those as well. Inbox us information about that or email us information about that as well. But is there anything else you want to share with the people?
No, I think for today I said everything that I had to share, but we just really appreciate you guys supporting us, following us on whatever platform that you particularly fancy. Keep following us there. But once again, we do this because we know that when men get in right position, the world changes, you
Yeah,
know. And so we just thank you for the support, and we know that it's long overdue for men to really get whole in these areas.
most definitely.
And so, thank you.
Thank you so much. But this is When Men Open Up, a show where we are redefining manhood through transparency. My name is Dominique,
And I'm Dexter.
and we are out. Thank you, and join us next time.